Why on earth did my little Austin Mini break down? Well, if you've already seen the previous two videos on this car, then you'll have a decent idea. But today on Twin Cam, we're going to fix it. Since this little car became homesick as I dragged her 270 miles south, Susie, my 1984 Austin Mini, has travelled over 1,000 miles. For a car that's technically broken, that's quite a distance, but it goes without saying that I've been avoiding any big, high-speed journeys. What happened is a total collapse of the ignition system. A slight misfire turned into a big misfire, and we called it quits. The Lucas 45D distributor sits behind the radiator grille, which does have a nice big shield behind it, just in case you wondered, and I'm removing the horn for better camera angles. This is the first time you and I together have been up close with this very oily A+, painted yellow to tell us it's 998cc. But a couple of days ago I was in here alone, and it all went rather British Leyland. So I've stripped down the top half of the distributor, and this is everything that sits beneath. First of all, we have the rotor arm, which I'm sure everybody here knows what that does. It turns under the distributor cap to distribute the high tension voltage that comes in here to each of the spark plugs here. That's fine, not an issue. But underneath that, we have two components that I've never played with before, because I've never had a car with points ignition. We'll come to this condenser in a moment, but first we have contact set, or the points themselves. And you'll see here that it sits as part of a big spring that goes around the outside, because beneath the rotor arm there is a little cam on the spindle of the distributor which turns and actuates this little blue arm here. It then opens the contacts here, or the points, which then with the spring open and close really very, very quickly. And these are what tells the ignition coil to ramp up its voltage to produce that high tension required to fire the spark plugs. Because the coil, of course, cannot just produce that high tension consistently all the time. It wants to produce it and then ramp down and produce it again and then ramp down. And so these points are what tells the coil to do that. It's then connected to the rest of the car's wiring system through a terminal here at the top. But unfortunately, as I was removing and then reinstalling that terminal, this riveted on piece just came off. Now, I didn't want to change the contact set that was on Susie, because these are known for being truly appalling quality. I didn't want to mess around with it. I thought I'll leave it as it is, and we will just change everything around it, because if this works, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to introduce another aftermarket part that is poor quality into the system, so I'll leave it as it is. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. So then we come to the condenser, which is what I believe to be our actual issue. So this wire here connects into the rest of the car's wiring system, and this is what connects to that terminal on the top of the contact set under the distributor cap where this is bolted in. And now this condenser, it's another word for a capacitor. It holds a charge. So when the points open and close, they want to arc. That the electricity always wants to take its path of least resistance. And so every time the points open and close, they want to arc. You don't want that to happen, however, because the coil needs to have that consistent feed to it. It needs to know exactly when to ramp up and when to stop. And if it doesn't know that, you get a misfire. This is what stops that arcing. The electricity flows down here into this capacitor and everyone's happy. That's why it's believed that this is our issue. This has stopped holding its charge, and therefore we have an arc across the points, which is leading to a misfire. So the points kind of collapsing under me held me back by about a day or so before my new best friend Derek supplied me with this. This is an original Lucas contact set that, judging by the packaging, has been sat here for nearly 40 years. It's virtually as old as the car in which it's going to be installed. But that is brand new old stock, and I bet you never heard anybody say the word Lucas and quality in the same sentence. But here we are. And you'll notice that while on this cheap aftermarket contact set, the terminal was riveted, on the proper Lucas one, it's folded over at the top. You might not be able to see that right now, but we'll certainly see it in a minute. So that clearly is a higher quality component. However, while I was away, I decided to order a few more things, because this is the replacement condenser that I bought. You'll notice there's a lot more wiring, but that's okay. That's just to allow it to be installed in other cars that have everything mounted in a different way. This is the bit we're actually interested in. And of course, there is that terminal on the top that connects to the contact set. But I don't know whether you can see that, but it's an awfully dodgy shape. And it's when installing this new condenser that I broke the points. Well, the points broke themselves, really, because they just shouldn't have done that. But regardless, that's not a great look. So, I went on the internet and bought another condenser from the same company. It's another Distributor one, which is believed to be the best quality part you can now buy. And again, the terminal is a bit wacky, so I'll just massage the terminal. Frankly, who cares? As long as the condenser itself works, then we're happy. But while I was there and getting next day delivery, I thought it would be wasteful to just buy a new condenser. So I also went and bought a rotor arm and a distributor cap, which initially I was not going to change, but seeing the quality of the parts, I thought it was necessary. So if we bring back our old rotor arm, we see that these two are a little bit different. The black one that came out of the car is riveted, while this red one is moulded into the plastic. And again, it says DD on it. It was manufactured by the distributor doctor. And the difference between these two is that this one is high quality and this one is decidedly low quality. You can buy both of these alongside each other at mini spares, but if you click on the listing for this one, which I believe is a third of the price of the red one, it actually says at the bottom, for reliability, use a different part number, the part number that redirects you to this one. So seeing that that was the quality of the rotor arm that was in the car, I thought, let's just refresh everything and get a high quality part. Same said about the distributor cap. While I was there, I bought another rotor arm, just for the sake of having two, for having a spare, and I also bought a distributor doctor set of contacts. Again, it says DD on it, and just like the Lucas part, so I can show you it here, that top section is folded over. It's not riveted on. So that will be much higher quality than the ones that came off. If maybe not as high quality, I don't know, as the Lucas one. But regardless, I have a number of new bits to totally go over this system and replace it with as high quality components as I possibly can. The only other thing I ordered were these two little felt pads. Now I only need one of these, I bought one as a spare, but below the rotor arm sits this little felt pad. And this is oiled and it provides lubrication to the spindle down the centre of the distributor, but it wasn't present on my car. So again, whoever's been working on this doesn't really know what they're doing and certainly hasn't done the research. Caveat to that is that I don't know what I'm doing, but at least I'm willing to learn and to research what the highest quality components are and how we should all go together. Simply ignoring the existence of this felt pad isn't going to do anyone any good when it's specified from factory. So there you go. Let's install all these bits. And before anybody says, actually, why don't you get electronic ignition? I will. I absolutely will be putting electronic ignition in this car. In fact, I already have the new electronic distributor. I bought the new electronic distributor before I bought all these parts. But I want to learn how to do the points because cars are fun. And that's the point of doing it, to learn something new, to experience something and to have a bit of fun while doing it. And also, video content. Chaos is content, what can I say?
So you can see a little bit of what I'm talking about in the distributor here. So down here is where the condenser mounts and the points go up and curve around here. There's a little hole at the edge here for that wiring to go through, and this is the spindle in the centre where that felt pad should be. You can see also the cam around here. It has 4 separate points on it that click against that arm and therefore actuate the points. Now when we install the new points, we need to set the gap for when they are fully open so that they click at the right time. So I'll set this up and we'll go and install everything. So first thing I need to ensure is that the points are sat properly. So there's a little kind of V-shape clip here that needs to go around a dowel, shall we call it, there. And under here, there's somewhere it needs to clip into. So the point should pivot like that along the spring at the top, which allows them to open and close. That little hole there is where the screw goes in to secure them, and you adjust them based on this pivot here. So that all seems okay. Now this cam wiping pad seems absolutely huge to me, and I'm using the one from the Distributor Doctor in the original Lucas points rather than using the original Lucas one, because the Lucas one has kind of turned to dust over time. I've also cleaned in the points themselves because I believe they come with a little coating on them to protect them, but regardless, it was a bit gunked up anyway just through time. You can see there's a little bit of corrosion on the body of the contact set here, but that doesn't matter to us, we are okay. So I believe all that is in, so we can very carefully so those points are now in and they're tight. So you can see that spring is free to move there. I have the condenser connected at the top here. And so now I will secure the condenser. It's really not a difficult job, this. It's just very fiddly. And this final bit here, this braided wire that goes around the outside, is just an earth. I don't want it to twist around too much, but it has to be secure. And there is the condenser in place. It's not fouling on the cam around the spindle here. As I said, that cam wiping pad looks absolutely huge, but you know, we'll see how it goes and hope that it's okay. I can pull a little bit more of this black wire out of the distributor here, and that all looks rosy. So our next job is to set the gap of the points. So what we need to do is turn the engine round so that this blue arm here is on the point of this cam. And then we can put feeler gauges in between, and the clearance, because I'm using metric feeler gauges, is between 0.35 and 0.4 millimeters. So in order to get the points open, we need to turn the engine over. And now the easiest way to do this is to put it in gear, if I'll take that all the way out, is to put the engine in gear and then move it backwards and forwards. But I don't want to do that because we're on a hill. So instead, I'm going to reduce the compression to 0 by taking the spark plugs out. And then I'll turn the fan or turn the bolt on the end of the alternator to get the engine turning with the car stationary. Rocking the adjustable spanner, perfect. Just for the sake of clarity, I've opened the points all the way. So what I've done is I've loosened off the securing screw just a little bit, and then I've wedged the screwdriver in here and opened up the points as much as possible. So you can see that that little blue arm is on the point of the cam, and the points are now really, really far open. So I can now adjust either way. I think I might have adjusted that a bit too tight. Just take that off. Oh, you see? Did you see the points totally closed there? So if we go a little bit tighter, just hold it together. And then wedge the screwdriver in here to open the points, and then push the other way to close the points. So I now need to, first of all, get them open again. It's all for illustrative purposes, this. So there you go, the points are now wide open. I'll just tighten it just a little bit so it's not likely to move. There you go. It's tight enough to adjust it. Well, it's tight enough for it not to move, but it's enough not to adjust it. And I need to make sure that that gap is correct. At the moment, there's far too much room. So this is 0.37 millimeters, which is right in the middle of that 0.35 to 0.4 clearance we need. So I'll keep adjusting and get this perfect. I think we have this correct now. So I've adjusted it up, and our clearance, to be correct, to be right in the middle, we want it to just slide between the points. There's a little bit of friction there, but it's slidable. Maybe it's a little bit tighter than 0.37, but it's certainly within spec. That's a nice fit. So I'll tighten up this screw and we can move on. So I've gone around the distributor and oiled where it needs to be oiled, but there was no felt pad in there. So that is to go in there, but I need to oil that so that it's able to provide the lubrication to the spindle below it. So I'll go and oil this up, and then we'll put the rotor arm on and the cap. Now, as all this was dry, I've actually over lubricated it a little bit. As you can see, I've put quite a few drops of oil on the pad, and I put a few underneath it as well, because if it was totally dry and nothing was going on there, then that can't have been good, can it? I've also lubricated down in the bottom of the distributor the centrifugal weights that allow the ignition advance, which I won't do now, but the entire plate here turns to alter the timing a little bit centrifugally. There's also a vacuum unit just on the top here. But yeah, I've lubricated everything, not really showing you because you can't see it. And now it's time for the new cap. Well, it works, and it hasn't been run for a couple of weeks, so we'll forgive it being a little bit stumbly, but it's certainly not misfiring, so I'm quite happy. So our ignition system thing doesn't end here, because I have a new set of leads. We're obviously going to be fitting new plugs. In fact, they're over here, NGK ones, and they are BP5 ESs, and the plugs currently in the car are also 5s. I wondered whether they were one heat range colder, the ones that I were putting in, but they are exactly the same plugs, just new. So I'll put these leads on. So, I don't know whether you can see this, but yeah, to me that doesn't look as though it's too bad. It's certainly not too badly worn. It has not been in there for that long, but it is a little bit white in places, which says to me it's running just ever so slightly lean, which is not surprising because that's what I'm told all of these early A+ 998 engines do. It's the way they're tuned. Never mind modern fuels, of course. So new BP5 spark plug, and the gap is supposed to be 0.64 millimeters. Again, that's metric equivalent, which this is not. That is just about perfect. Now, if we take a look at the old spark plug, have a little read of that gap. That's actually too tight by my measure. I know, with a little bit of a clean up, it does slide through. But yeah, so those plugs were gapped just about perfect. The torque figure is actually too low for my torque wrench, so I'm going for snug. The final thing we have to replace on the ignition system is the coil. Now, alongside Susie being a points ignition car, she also has a ballasted ignition, which means that essentially the ignition coil operates at 6 volts. So there's a ballast wire that runs through the wiring loom that drops the 12 volts of the car down to 6. The coil then operates off 6, and when the car is first starting, it overrides that and runs at 12 volts. So essentially the coil for a couple of seconds is overpowered. The idea being is that the car is easier to start, especially in winter or when it's not been started for a while. But it's not really necessary in the modern world, but regardless, I have the correct ballast ignition coil to replace it. So this is a Viper dry resin ignition coil. I'm told that the Viper ones are the best by none other than AC Dodd, and so who am I to argue with him? This is a VC110, which is the correct ballasted one. VC110MB to be precise, which just means it's matte black. So the one that's currently on the car is a Unipart one, may well be original to the car, I don't know. And if I can, I shall be swapping over the bracket. But this new coil is a little bit larger, but it is the same type as the original, so it should be correct. So these terminals on the top of the original coil, they don't want to come off. So instead, I'm going to unbolt them and just bolt the entire thing, whole scale, onto the new ignition coil, because why not? Why faff about re-crimping terminals when you can just bolt them? Funnily, although this thing says Unipart on it, if we look at the top, it's actually manufactured by Bosch, interestingly. So yeah, I don't know whether that is original fitment or not, but it certainly looks it. Let's put this new one on. Little bit of a drawback is that with this new bracket, the original bolts won't go through it. So I'm going to take this bracket off and fit the original one. Final thing to install is the king lead. Very good. Well, again, that works. Now, that hesitation, I was putting my foot straight down on the throttle pedal and it doesn't like that. Now, it was doing that before, so it's not an issue we've added. Instead, I'm going to try and fix that now, because while this car needs properly tuning, it needs setting up by someone who knows what they're doing, who can file down the correct carburettor needle and get it just right. And also, I've not touched the timing, at least. I could at least do with setting the ignition timing, but just again, to get it working, we're going to check the oil level in the carburettor dashpot, and we're also going to put a new needle and a new spring in the carburettor as well, just to bring it up a little bit. Now, I'd love to be giving you a better view of all this, but first of all, I'm not a good videographer, and second of all, a Mini has a very compact engine bay. So compact, in fact, that the air cleaner barely fits. Now, first of all, that's broken, but I knew that anyway. And the air cleaner is perfectly clean. I've checked that already. Now, there is some oil in this dashpot. You can see when I press it down, that travel is damped. But there isn't very much oil in there at all. And it's certainly not at the level it should be. However, for now, I'm just going to tighten that back up and we'll take off the dashpot, which is this top section. I have a feeling that when I do anything on this car once it's in the garage, I'm going to take the bonnet off. So there is the spring in the top. And this is the piston, complete with the carburettor needle at the bottom, which actually regulates the fuel flow through the jet, through the carburettor and into the engine. So I'm going to do my best to demonstrate exactly what all this stuff does. Now I only have one hand, so it's not going to be perfect, but of course this is the part of the carburettor that you see, known as the dash pot. And in the top here, beneath this damper, you fill with oil in order to fill up this piston here. This sits in the bottom of there, and as you put your foot down, or as the load on the engine increases more correctly, this rises and then falls again within the carburettor. And this needle down the bottom here is what then therefore meters the fuel that's going in. So of course, as it rises, the needle gets pointier, should we say. It gets smaller in its volume, and therefore it lets more fuel through, and then it goes back down, it gets the thicker end of the needle, and you get less fuel. So that's the very basic version of how that works, and it goes up and down, and the oil is what damps its travel. So if there's no oil in, then as soon as you put your foot down, it's going to catapult up to the top, but the car won't need that much fuel, and therefore it'll start doing horrible things, and it'll, well, essentially, I'm hoping that it will start doing what you've just seen it doing, when it starts hesitating and starts, being rough and generally not very nice. Now the car stops doing that once it's warm. And of course, I'm not tuning this carburettor today. That needs to be tuned by someone who knows what they're doing, and can correctly file down the needle that's in the bottom and also make the fueling absolutely perfect. From the factory, they never did. Good enough was good enough in the factory, because they're trying to produce millions of the things. Now, as you can see, there's a spring in here that sits on the top of the piston there. And over time, they lose their elasticity and they squish down. So I have this new red spring, which is the correct one, which will go on there. And I also have a new carburettor needle. So having a quick look over at the manual, the factory needle is an ADE needle. This one is an AAE needle, which I believe is a little bit richer. Now, of course, that's not going to make the car run properly. It's just going to get us there or thereabouts before, well, AC Dog, let's be honest, can come and make it better. But with only one hand, I'm going to unscrew this here, take the needle out, replace it with this needle, reassemble everything all together and put it back onto the car. Now, this is a little bit different to what I've experienced before. Now, this is quite filthy, the way all this has gone there. It's actually indicative that these things could do with fuel filters. But, and they never had them from factory, and this one certainly doesn't. But on HIF carburettors, i.e. later cars and metros, the piston stays retained within the dashpot, and there's a little circlip that you need to undo in order to get it to come loose, whereas here, it's all loose. And I did have a little look in Haynes just to see if that was right earlier, and it is, so I'm not worried at all. But yeah, let's get this back together. Now, I wasn't planning on interjecting any more video in here, but you can see how the needle comes out. It's got its little spring on the top, and it has a collar here, which has a cutout section on the side that the screw then secures into. But what's interesting, and you're not going to be able to see this, I'm sure, because the GoPro won't pick it up, but that is an AAC needle. And of course, it's ADE, the one that the car should have had from factory. So that is very interesting. AAE is the needle we're putting in. So yeah, we'll see what a difference this makes. So that needle can still move up and down due to the spring, and it can move side to side a little bit, but it is secure within the body of the piston. So in the same orientation as it came out, vaguely, see, it won't move around. The piston can go back in. Then the spring, ensuring it sits correctly. And again, in the same orientation as it came out, the dashpot. Now this carburetor is a little bit filthy inside, which does give me concerns that it might need to be taken off and thoroughly cleaned and then rebuilt, if I can even get onto this screw. Flipping heck. It's the simplest of things, isn't it? But the specification of the dashpot oil is something that a lot of people think is an absolute. So the owner's handbook will tell you engine oil should go into the top here. Haynes will tell you either 2050 or 1040 or 1030, which are three very different weights of oil. The real answer is that it's whatever your car needs. The thickness, the viscosity, should I say, of the oil determines how quickly it rises up and down. And so the thicker the oil, the slower it travels. The thinner the oil, the faster it travels. There are other adjustments to be made as well, but I'm just going to put in some 1040 as a medium, an in-between. Now it's very difficult to measure exactly what the oil level is in the top of the dashpot, but I think Haynes says 0.15 of a millimetre above the line of the piston that you see in the thing. Regardless, it needs to be a little bit above it. So with that back on, I'll shove the air cleaner on and we'll see if it works. So here's the pivotal moment. Have I made my car worse? It's only so much better. Now, I don't think it would have idled quite like this before. I think it would have cut out doing what I'm doing to it, but that's my foot hard down on the throttle, and you hear it's not perfectly happy. It doesn't want to just rev immediately, but you don't put your foot straight down on the throttle pedal on a carburetor. That's not how they want to work. You want to be a little bit smoother with your inputs. You see, there's just that little bit of a hesitation there midway. It just kind of goes, "Rah." But you know what? With everything that's been done to that, it's smoother, it idles better, it revs better, it doesn't hesitate like it did. So I'm going to call that a success. And of course, I haven't touched the ignition timing, I haven't touched the idle setting, I haven't touched the mixture on the carburetor. I have not adjusted anything. I've only fitted some new parts to it. So this is running nowhere near as well as it should run, or will run once I've eventually had that done. Let's button it back up and see if it breaks down. Well, I'm sorry to like my microphone, and I've just noticed the camera is slightly tilted. But you join me on my commute, because I had to get the car fixed in a certain period of time, because I need it to go and record videos, because Clarence, my daily driver, my E46 BMW, which is a class motorway car, is currently having virtually entirely new suspension installed. So that car should come back lovely, and I will have absolutely no money whatsoever. But it means that on a day that I didn't expect I would need to go and film, I need to go and film. And that means that I need to commute for the first time in Susie.
which of course I haven't taken on a motorway since we broke down. So again, you play silly games, you win silly prizes. But regardless, we'll give it a go. We'll hope to enjoy ourselves. And let's just hope that things go right. I mean, I've driven this car over 1,000 miles now, and it's been absolutely perfect, but I've never done sustained high-speed motorway runs. I've only bobbed about the place. I've done maximum of 30 miles in one go. So we will see. What I can tell already from a very quick test drive last night is that it's a little bit too rich now. I said previously it was too lean, but now you will start the car. You need a little bit of choke in order to do so, but as soon as it fires, you don't need any choke and it will idle absolutely fine. So yeah, it's a bit rich. But as I said, you know, this kind of tuning, it's not tuning, but this kind of tuning, just putting a different needle in, is not tuning properly. You need to actually modify that needle and of course set it based on the air-fuel ratio. I need to get the timing sorted properly and yeah, get the baseline mixture right in the carburettor before and then modifying the needle a little bit. So yeah, I'm happy with what's happened here. The car is smoother, the car runs cleaner, and let's hope that it's a little bit more resilient. So I'll come back later once we're on the motorway and we'll see how things are. One thing I do have to remember to do is to alter the points gap again. So after 500 miles of installation, at the moment I've done maybe 10. After 500 miles of installation, I need to reset the points gap just to make it right. But I'll do that off camera, I'm sure. Let's just hope we don't break down. Well, that's an indicated 66 miles per hour, 67 even, and things are smoothly so far. But of course, they were smooth anyway, and it took about 30 miles for us to do anything stupid. So we'll see how we get. We're now doing 68 miles per hour, and actually, we're just about to clock over 34,000 miles. So this car has driven quite a lot further in my few months of ownership than it has over the last few years. So I'm certainly getting my use out of it anyway. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. At the moment, yeah, it's a bit loud, it's a Mini, but it's perfectly smooth at, again, 67 miles per hour indicated. So yeah, we'll see. Well, we're about 20-ish, maybe a little bit more miles into motorway driving now. We've been relegated to a dual carriageway at 60 miles per hour because we're about to go over the new Runcorn Bridge. Still call it new, it's been around for 10 years now, but goodness, I hope we don't break down on here. But regardless, everything is going very, very well. She's running beautifully. No sign of any misfires, no sign of any fueling issues. Bobbing along very nicely at 70, allegedly even a little bit more, but absolutely not, because who'd do that? There's a speed limit for a reason. And that's about 115 or so kph. For those of you who use that measurement instead. And yeah, we're very happy. We have a nice view of the River Mersey. And I'm very happy. And we've been in the outside lane of the motorway quite a bit. We're in the outside lane now, just because it's the way it feeds us on. We're going to move actually to the inside lane, because we need to come off here. And now we're relegated to 53 miles per hour. But we've been in the outside lane loads. I've lost count of how many times we've been in the outside lane of the motorway going faster than everybody else, because, you know, there are dawdlers in Toyota RAV4s and BMW X3s and just generally quite turgid stuff like that. So yeah, the car is rattling away. You can hear the keys rattling in the ignition. That rear window rattles like hell. But yeah, it's a car. It's a car and it works. So I'm going to take that as gospel. I'll have any updates for you if there are any. But if not, as we're on the Runcorn Bridge, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please do click like and subscribe to Twincam as well. I'm forever indebted to my wonderful and long-suffering Patreon supporters. So if you'd like to support me that way, then please do follow the link in the description. And I'll have more videos coming along soon. Lorries are awfully big in a minute.